ever thought anything like this was possible before 2008, before the white paper.
Meantime, Bitcoin crossing 11,000 for the first time just a few hours after topping 10,000.
Bitcoin products.
What is the temptation of governments to step in to regulate it, and would regulation kill it?
There's a lot of talk about Bitcoin and blockchain and how it's sort of the unspoken revolution that's going to allow for more freedom and more voluntary transactions. Can you explain, break it down for me?
Bitcoin is a little bit of a distraction. What really matters is the ledger on which Bitcoin lives, called the blockchain. What is a blockchain? It's a way for us to keep track of property rights claims, ownership claims, which is something we've done since the ancient world. And you can go back and look at the succession of technology since 150,000 years ago. You know, when you own something, first of all, you come up with private property and you want to say, this is mine, and you want to persuade other people that this is yours, so they'll leave your stuff alone. And then you can know who else's stuff to leave alone, so you can get along. That's basically it, right? So we had stones, we had scratch ownership rights and stones and immutable objects. You want it to be immutable, you want it to be true, you want it to be not subject to fraud and manipulation. Later we had other technologies like papyrus, which was relatively cheap, but also it wasn't immutable. It wasn't permanent, it would tend to fade. So then later we got parchment. And parchment was very nice, except it was a little rough hewn, so you couldn't really write numbers on it very well in a way they were legible. So then we got vellum, which is an improved form of parchment on which, for example, the Medicis kept all their ledgers and their books about who owed them, who owned what, on vellum. It's a way of making the world more peaceful because we have agreement that we're less likely to invade each other's rights, essentially. But we always needed technology. Then, of course, we got paper. Then we got databases in the 1970s. That was a glorious innovation, the database, you know. The problem with all of these systems is that they're all centralized. They have one central point, one person controlling the ledger. What the blockchain did is it took this ledger technology that dates from stones and papyrus and vellum and parchment and put it into the cloud so that everyone can look at it at the same time, so that there can be real consensus. So now you have the capacity to develop these immutable records, permanent records of ownership rights, and you can change it as people trade. And so this block moves over here, this block moves over there. And the only way you get to change it is if you can demonstrate proof of work or proof of authority to change it. And it's changed in the cloud so everybody can look at it. That is an amazing innovation. So that's the important part. Bitcoin, it's just a token, you know, that's used to adjust the ledger. So that's it. It's all about ownership and claims that people are making for what they own. That's it. Essentially, Matt, it's like any kind of information that you need to bundle up into some kind of packet and send peer-to-peer to anybody else in the world through the internet, you can do now. And what kind of information is that? All the terms of engagement that help us live better lives. So contracts, titles, you know, to land, to cars, marriages. Any agreement you've made with somebody else can go onto the blockchain, and it becomes a source of peace because it's a trusted source that is not centralized, so you can't manipulate the books anymore. Isn't that extraordinary? We've always wanted this. I mean, if the caveman could have had a blockchain, they would have been all in, right? The implications are astonishing, and we're making a big leap here, but we could eliminate government money today and still have a beautiful global money, many monies, competitive monies. We could eliminate really courts. Maybe not just yet, but we're getting there. Smart contracting it works beautifully on the blockchain. Reduces litigation. You know, you no longer have to litigate. If you've got contracts that automatically do what they're supposed to do, then there's no disputes. There's no attorneys, no juries, no judges. It just digitizes everything.
So let me get this straight. Fewer big bankers and fewer lawyers.
Yeah, right.
why can't we all agree that this is a good thing?
It's so funny, you know, when I first discovered all this stuff, this has been a gradual revelation for me. And if you start thinking about it, you do get obsessed with it. But I remember about 3 years ago thinking, this is so amazing. Why isn't it happening sooner? Why aren't we already there? And once you see the beauty of it, you know where we're headed. But things take time. Technology enters into the market process. It is always subject to improvement. The user interfaces, the technology improves, everything gets better, but it takes time. This is true with railroads, flight, electricity. Nothing comes to us as if descended from the cloud, perfect and finished, you know. And so I hear all these objections to Bitcoin, you know, like I can't figure out the user interfaces. It's too complex for me. I can't buy a sandwich down the street. You know, these kind of, give it time. Just give it time.
I have bought a beer with Bitcoin.
Really?
In Prague, so I know that this is one of the most profound tools for